Welcome back once again, all of my low-carb friends, and for those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. Today I have two very simple keto recipes for you. The first one is for an incredibly easy 3-ingredient keto tortilla chips, and the second one is for super simple keto chicken tortilla soup using these keto tortilla chips. And if you want printable versions of these recipes, you can check out my website at janet'sdeliciouslowcarbkitchen.com. You can find printable versions of these and other goodies there for you. And if you're new to the channel and you'd like to see more delicious low-carb keto recipes, make sure you click that subscribe button and click the notification bell that's right next to the subscribe button. That way you can be notified every time I put out new videos every Wednesday and Saturday. And if you'd like to help support the channel, make sure you scroll down into the description of the video. You'll see some affiliate links anytime you purchase anything. Using those affiliate links, a small portion of your purchase will go to me and help support the channel. And while you do all that, let's get cooking. Preheat your oven to 400 degrees. Line a large baking sheet with parchment paper. In a medium mixing bowl, combine 28 grams or 1/4 cup of coconut flour, 25 grams or 1/4 cup of flax or chia seed meal, make sure it's very finely ground, 9 grams or 1 tablespoon of xanthan gum, and 3 grams or a half teaspoon of salt. Sift or whisk these all together until they're fully combined and there are no lumps in the dry ingredients. Very gradually add up to 1/2 cup of hot water to the dry ingredients and use a fork to stir it in a little at a time. I usually add it about 1 tablespoon at a time. You may not need the whole half of a cup. I actually used a little bit less. What you're looking for is as you're adding the hot water and stirring it with your fork, you're looking for it to start clumping together and the dry ingredients becoming just moistened enough to stick together. You want to be very careful not to add too much water. If you add too much water, then your dough is going to be too moist and it will never crisp up. So that's why it's very important that you just gradually add it a little bit at a time. As soon as you start seeing all the dry ingredients coming together and clumping together, then do not add any more water. Once the dough begins to form, shape it together into a ball. Then massage the dough in your hands for about 1 minute. This is just to absorb any extra moisture. As you're massaging it and putting it into a ball, it should come together very easily. It should not be crumbly at all. It will have a little bit of a slightly sticky texture, but it should not be sticking to your fingers. If it is crumbling off and you can't seem to shape it into a ball, then just add a tiny bit more water until you can shape it together and massage it without it crumbling on you. If it is sticking to your hand so much that you can't massage it, then you need to add just a tiny, tiny bit more coconut flour. Once you've massaged the dough for about 1 minute and it's absorbed any extra moisture, you still should have a very lightly moist, slightly sticky dough. Then line a clean work surface and press or roll the dough out into a very thin rectangle. You don't want it to be see-through, but you do want it to be very, very thin. Think about what you're trying to replicate here. You're trying to replicate a tortilla chip. So think about the thickness of a tortilla chip. Somewhere between 1/8 and 1/16 of an inch is generally what I shoot for. How much water you have in this dough and how thin you roll it, those are the two key things of how your chips are going to crisp up. If it's too wet, it won't crisp up right. If they're too thick, they won't crisp up right. So roll them out as thin as you can without them being see-through. I usually divide my dough up into 2 portions and roll and shape the portions individually, just because for me, it's easier to make sure that I'm getting the dough rolled out thin enough if I divide it into 2 portions. You don't have to do that. You can just roll it all together in one big rectangle. Once you've rolled your dough all out and it's a nice, even, very thin rectangle, then use a pizza cutter or a very sharp knife and cut the dough into your desired size and shape of pieces. If you're doing this for the chicken tortilla soup, I like to cut them in strips rather than triangles. If while you're cutting them, you see that one is a little bit thicker than another, make sure you flatten it out to where they're all the same thickness. Another thing to keep in mind is while you are rolling and shaping the dough, you want to make sure that the dough does stay lightly moist. If it does start to get sticky to where it's sticking to your fingers or sticking to your cutter, then just barely dampen the tips of your fingers and lightly rub just a little bit of layer of water over the top of your dough. Once the chips have all been shaped to your desired size and equal thickness, place them in a single layer on your prepared baking sheet. Make sure you space them just a little bit apart. They don't have to be spaced far apart. These don't expand or rise or anything, but you do want to keep a little bit of space in between them just for even cook, and this helps to make sure that they do actually crisp up so they have air all the way around them. Then place them into your preheated oven and bake at 400 degrees for 10 minutes or until they're starting to dry out a little bit and they release easily from the parchment paper. Remove them from the oven. Let them cool for just about a minute or two just so you don't burn your fingers, and turn the chips over to the other side. They still will be hot, so be careful not to burn your fingers. You can use a spatula if you prefer. Then place them back in your preheated oven and bake them for another 5 minutes or so, or until they're very lightly golden around the edges and crispy. After 5 minutes, remove them from the oven. They should be starting to get crispy. They may not be 100% crispy yet, but they will crisp up more as they cool. So allow them to cool on the baking sheet for at least 10 minutes or until they are crunchy. Now, if after 10 minutes, if they're still not crispy or crunchy as you want them to be, then put them back in the oven at that 400 degrees for about 3 to 5 minutes or until they are as crispy as you want them to be. If you do put them in again after they've cooled for 10 minutes, make sure you watch them carefully so that they don't burn. Once they're done baking and they've cooled and they're nice and crunchy as you want them to be, serve them immediately and place them on the serving platter of your choice. You can eat them plain or you can eat them with your favorite dip. Also, if you want to, you can sprinkle some different seasonings on them. Or if you want to, when you are stirring the dough together, you can add some herbs or some chili powder or garlic, onion, just different seasonings of your choice if you want a different flavor in your tortilla chips. That is up to you how you want them to taste. If you do have any leftovers, store them in an airtight container at room temperature for up to 3 days. Now, if you do store them, they may lose some of their crispiness. If they do, then just pop them in your oven at 375 degrees for about 3 to 5 minutes or until they've crisped back up again. For the chicken tortilla soup, place a 15-ounce can of undrained diced tomatoes into your blender. Add 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 2 14.5-ounce cans of chicken broth or 4 cups of homemade chicken broth. Add a half teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of dry cilantro or dry oregano, 1 teaspoon of chili powder, a half teaspoon of ground black pepper, and a half teaspoon of dry cumin. Puree these in your blender on high for about 1 minute or until it is completely smooth or your desired texture. Once your soup base is all pureed, pour it into a 5-quart stock pot. Give it a little stir just to make sure that everything is all combined. Add 1 15-ounce can of black soybeans. Make sure it is drained and rinsed before you put it in. Add your desired amount of chopped onions. Stir everything together to make sure that the beans and the onions are evenly distributed in your soup. Add about 30 ounces or roughly about 2 cups of cooked shredded chicken. Bring the soup to a low boil over medium-high heat. Then reduce the heat to low and simmer on low for about 20 minutes or until all the flavor has been infused together in the soup. Make sure you stir the soup occasionally to make sure that it is getting evenly heated all the way through. Once the soup's all done simmering, remove it from the heat. Then spoon your desired amount into the bowl of your choice. If you want to, you can sprinkle in a little bit of cheese or chop up some jalapenos, put a little bit of a topping on top if you want to. Then add your desired amount of tortilla chips or tortilla strips. If you do have any leftovers of the soup, allow it to cool completely, then store it in an airtight container in your refrigerator for up to 1 week. Eat and enjoy. And those are our recipes of the day. I hope you enjoyed them both. If you did and you want to see more videos like this, make sure you click that thumbs up like button, click that subscribe button, leave me a comment if you want to. Let me know if there's any recipes that you'd like to learn how to make, and I'll do what I can to get those out there for you. And as always, keep cooking.